Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
This might be new to some people, but the realization that life can be hard. Now, this is not to say that not some areas in your life are going to be super easy. Maybe you have trained or you have just found the right fits and things work out perfectly. But sometimes things don't always go your way because people can have hardships in life, from their finances to relationships, health struggles. I mean, we can say that, well, I wish I had the perfect life. I wish I had, a healthy body. Maybe you were born sickly, or you grew up sickly. Maybe you grew up in, dire straits and you didn't have money, poverty. And so you might say, well, we don't have good health. We don't have good money. Our life is hard, essentially, right? And we can look at other people and we can see that they're growing up with good health and they're growing up with money, and maybe they're growing up with love in the household. It just creates a different type of mindset, because what was for them is not for you, as you can see, but how they're built is different than how you're built. So let me go into a story. So if you were a person who wanted to build a home, and there's different types of concrete. I don't know if people realize that there's different types of concrete. If you mix it with, certain things, and you mix it right, add enough water or less water, whatever, you can get concrete that is as tough and as hard as steel. Or you can get, concrete that can barely keep up a house foundation without cracking. And so there's different levels of concrete, and there's different levels of mindset. Because if you had to fortify your mind, would you want the easy way to do it, where everyone is giving you everything and everything is nice? Or would you want the hard way, where you're built for it? I think of the story of Mike Tyson and his son, and have talked about the story before. And basically, his son, talked to Mike, was like, "Hey, Dad, I want to be a boxer like you." Right? Any son can look at a father's greatness and say, "You know what? This is a man that, this is my legacy in a sense, or my aspirations or my goals that I should be chasing." And Mike said, you can't be a boxer. You don't have it in you, right? You went to private schools." And he was joking, but he was serious, because there is a certain type of mind that is developed in the hood versus in the private communities or in the wealthy neighborhoods. And you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is, if you grew up in that hardship, you're just refined differently. You are built differently, right? Your mindset is different, it's tougher. Now, this is not to say that the person who has grown up with everything cannot develop that mindset with time, because you can put yourself in trainings, you can put yourself in boot camps, and you can put yourself where you're challenging your mind. The reality is, there's always going to be that idea in your mind, that seed of how you grew up, right? Because if you grew up good, that's always going to be there with you, right? For you, maybe even. But if you grew up with nothing, and you don't know love, and you don't know kindness, and you just know hate, and you know violence, that is who you're going to be able to, step into so much better. Now, this is not to say that everyone who's violent and who is, this tough son of a gun, can't break. Anyone can break. It just, it's dependent on your levels of training, right? Trained CIA spies, they can last anywhere between 18 hours to maybe 48 hours or something like that, being tortured continuously, right? And you have to ask yourself, if they can break in that amount of time, how soon are you going to break, right? Most people, they get a gun pointed to them. They're like, whoa, 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 I'm sorry, right? They already broke, right? Versus if you get a gun pulled on you in the hood, maybe, and you got yourself, gun pulled on you all of these times, maybe you got shot and you came out alive, you might say, pull the trigger, right? You just are refined. You have that mindset of, it doesn't matter, right? I already lived this. And so some things can be traumatic for some people, and some things might be just another day in the park, right? Another day in the hood. And so when we're looking at life, it's very similar to this aspect of there's going to be struggles, right? The battles we see, the battles we don't see, the battles we grew up with, and the battles that we might never knew happen. Very similar to history. Do you know about the Battle of Gettysburg? Do you know about World War One or World War Two? Do you know what happened on all of the attacks, 9/11? I mean, we can go down the list of all the things that happened. And eventually, history is just part of the past. People don't necessarily say, let me learn about what has happened in the past because they're so busy looking at today. And so people today are going to say, oh, there's just no room for success. There's no room for glory because guess what? We have all these rich people and they're taking all the money or something along those lines. And the stock market is only built for, the top 1% or something, right? And we can go down the list of all the reasons why this has happened. Then we could look at socialism, where everyone should have the same, right? You should get the same amount of money and I should get the same amount of money. But the problem with that is it does not matter if everyone gets paid the same. If you have the mindset for poverty, you will live in poverty still because the same people who are taking that same income, they will invest it, they will grow it, and they would make their money work for them versus someone with a poor mindset is going to say, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go buy a car. I'm going to go buy a pocketbook. I'm going to go buy some brand new shoes. And so you are just giving yourself like a anchor, right? More obstacles to be on that same par. So right now, yes, you can make everything even, right? We can snap our fingers. Everything can be even. But eventually you're going to start to slow down. It's almost like if I say, okay, let's race. I'm not the fastest person in the world, but I can run, right? And I'm sure if I was going against like Usain Bolt and we literally started at the same line, he's probably going to beat me. And maybe you can beat Usain Bolt. I don't know. But the reality is we started the same, but yet he finished so far ahead. And so we have to look at the differences to how people can get so much further. And yet, I thought we were equal. I thought we started the same. And the same thing is true in life, right? Life can be hard. You might say you want something, you might say you don't want something. The world might give you what you don't want and you live with it. Or maybe it's shaking something you want and you fight for it. It depends on who you are. Some people are going to fight to live a wonderful life, and some people are going to live a life that they're not happy with. So, can that truly be a life that you can call wonderful? If you're just kind of living every single day, wanting more, desiring more, but you're not taking action, this leads to the mindset that life can be hard, but you don't have to make it harder than what it is. And so we get into the idea of, well, why do people make their life hard, right? Well, one of the reasons they do it is because their mind is not focused. Their mind is negative. The mind is naturally negative. I'm not here to say that you are the reason why you are negative. Your mind is naturally negative. It was once a survival mechanism. If something was rustling in the bush, you're like, oh my God, something's in that bush. Let me pay attention because I'm not going to see something that can potentially harm me and not have some level of awareness to it, right? Fear might, come in my mind and my body, and maybe adrenaline starts to, enact, and I'm like, okay, let me figure out what I do next versus let me panic and freeze. I think back when I was a kid, oh man, I had nightmares sometimes, and it wasn't like frequent, but sometimes during the nightmares, something would happen in the nightmares that was so scary. It would be a skeleton or an animal chasing me, and I froze and I just couldn't move, right? Even though I knew I needed to get away, even though I knew like whatever was happening wasn't exactly what I wanted, it was almost like my body wouldn't move. Even though my mind was giving me these sparks saying, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Move, take action. This is life. Many people, they find themselves unable to move. They're frozen. They're stuck. Their mind is their anchor. And that is what negativity is. It is the anchor. Because the negative aspect of the mind is not being able to get away from your attacker or your assailant. But the positive side is going to be able to flee or to take action and to run and to be able to find yourself in safety rather than in danger. So if we are living in the fear of this uncertainty or this, unsettling mindsets, we need to look at our mind for what it is. It is naturally negative, but can we make it naturally positive? It does take some time. And this is not to say that you look at a situation and you're super optimistic and you are in a motorcycle accident, your leg gets chopped off, you're like, oh, lost a leg. Like that's going to cause some severe mental damage. And you have to do the work for it, right? Because the work is going to begin after the trauma, not before. Now, I would love for you to do the work before the trauma, but many people, they wait for the trauma to come to them. Well, this is the same aspect of you are making your life harder. If you wait for something bad to happen in your life before you take action, you are living backwards. And most of the people in the world are living backwards. We need to figure out how to get out of that cycle, right? Because we already know why we do it. Our mind is just like that, right? Our circumstances like that. If we saw our mom or our dad or our grandma living in this, type of lifestyle or in this type of way, we might say, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And one of the things my son does is he's 3. He likes to jump on the floor, right? Like he was running and goes, hiya, and he jumps on the floor. Sometimes he's like, Dad, help, like to help him up and things like that. And I'm like, get up yourself. And then he's like, okay. And he gets up himself, right? But it doesn't mean that he's not going to keep on trying, right? So he would do, again, see if I'm going to help him up, and I don't. Now, there's two schools of thought here, right? One, Mike, why are you not helping your son up? You're such a bad dad. Now he's going to resent you, and every time he needs help, he's not going to ask for help because he can do it himself, and that's the point. I'm not going to be around every day. I'm not going to be around always. One day I'm going to be dead and gone, and he's going to be left to figure out how he's going to fight in this world by himself without someone who cares for him. I'm going to teach him. I'm going to train him. I'm not afraid to teach him how to fight dragons and fight wars at times of peace. This is the mindset where many people, they fall into. They say everything is perfect around us. Why do we have to be hard? Why do we have to be resilient? Why do we have to be disciplined? Why do we have to learn the things that seem insignificant today? When's the last time you learned a life skill? CPR, Heimlich maneuver, gardening, whatever it be. If you need your car for something, right? Being a mechanic, fixing your car, these skills can maybe one day save your life. Yeah, you might not do anything about it. Marksmanship, martial arts. And so we have the potential to learn these skills every single day, but yet we don't until, guess what, something happens. And I'm a firm believer of making sure you have a fire extinguisher before you have a fire. Because people might go outside and say, oh, yeah, I have a hose. I can do something. And the reality was you could have just pulled the fire extinguisher from underneath the sink and put out the fire on the stove. Many people, they just think, oh, yeah, I can call 911. I can call the police and someone will come save me. Well, one day, maybe someone won't come save you. You have to be the person that saves yourself, because I look at the homelessness, right? Where people can go up to someone and say, hey, do you want to get clean today? Or do you know anyone that wants to get clean? And they're literally living in dirt on the cement in the blistering sun or the freezing cold. They're like, no, I'm okay. We don't want to get clean. Why in the world are they making their life harder when they have an opportunity to make some changes? And the reality is that they're just not ready to break the cycle. And so, what a cycle is going to be different to, person to person. If I am a person that needs to break a cycle for some reason, I'll figure out the pros and the cons to breaking the cycle, not breaking the cycle. I would also look at how much effort and energy is going to take in order for me to break it. Because if I was, let's say I'm an alcoholic, right? I'm an alcoholic and I drink every night, right? I drink a full, let's say, 8 beers or something like that. So it's not it's like half a 12 pack or something, or like 3/4 of a 12 pack. I might say, you know, this is costing me XYZ amount of money, because let's say I'm spending, $6 on those 8 bears or something like that. And I know it's cheap for bear, but maybe I'm spending $8 for bears, right? I'm using that money and I'm spending $8 for bear, and I'm doing that 7 times a week. And I'm like, okay, well, I can use this $56 for something else. Or I can say, you know what? I'm just gonna keep doing this. And by the end of the month, 200 plus dollars. And by the end of the year, I'm spending thousands of dollars. This is the reality, right? People don't look at it for how long it is, right? And I'm just looking at it in terms of one thing, the cost, how much money I'm spending. But I'm not looking at how much damage it is doing to my liver. I'm not looking at how it's destroying my career, my job. I'm not looking at how it might be destroying my family and my relationships. I'm just literally looking at how much it's going to cost me to get drunk so I can forget the world, so that I can forget all of my hardships, so I can continue my habit. Well, if we want to break the cycle, we have to do something very similar to what Alcohol Anonymous did, the AAA meetings. And I talked about this on a previous episode, but it's the same concept. And the concept is we have to take ownership, right? One of the things they do in the terms of taking ownership is we're saying we have no power over our addiction. And that can bring about some level of power. But I like to do the opposite, right? I like to say, well, I do have the power, right? I have the power to change. I have the power to rebel. I have the power to flourish or to grow, right? We all have the potential. A seed, right? You get a seed from the store and they come in those little paper packages with wax on the inside. And it's just to help them, remain waterproof. And that seed, if given to someone who has never gardened before, they might say, what is this? Is it food? And they might take a bite, right? And they might say, this is terrible, right? They might crack the seed open to see what's inside, and there's nothing in there. But if you take the seed and you use it properly, we put in some soil, some good soil. We water it. We make sure that the sun is going to be able to hit the soil, warming the soil, right? And now the seed feels alive. It has a purpose now. It's not just locked in a piece of paper with wax on the inside. It now has potential for growth as it always has once did, right? Because the same potential it had in that bag versus in that ground was the same, but yet the environment changed. And so we can change our mindset, and the mindset can be our environment. Because I'm sure the seed would be more than delighted to grow if it had the opportunity to, but yet we locked it up. Someone manufactured those seeds and they say, I'm putting you in a bag and I'm locking you away so you don't have potential for growth until someone decides to say, hey, I want you to grow. Sometimes that's coaching. Sometimes that's me saying, hey, I want you to change. But then just because I want you to change doesn't mean you will change. Your parents might want you to change, your partners, relationships, and your family might want you to change, but it doesn't mean you will. It doesn't mean you'll stop. I won't forget when, my father, he was an alcoholic, and everyone would tell him, hey, you got to stop. You got to, you can't be doing this. Sure enough, he said, oh, yeah, I know. And boom, stroke, right? Of course, he was able to recover 90%. Still, the mentality was people that loved him were saying, hey, you should stop. You should figure out your life. You should get ahead, right? And getting ahead meaning you should do things that are going to benefit you rather than take away from you. But yet he couldn't see it. Yet he had a good upbringing, right? He had a mom who loved him. The dad, who gave him the sperm was never in his life. But, you know, nonetheless, he figured out how to be a dad. He figured out how to navigate through life. But then again, he still hit a roadblock. Life can happen so quickly where those roadblocks just kind of happen like a dead end street that we weren't paying attention to. All of a sudden, we're driving, we're on cruise control, and then we fail to see the no outlet sign and we keep on moving, and then we see the no dead end sign, and we're like, how did we get here? Because we didn't pay attention to the first sign. And we can do good things in our life if we begin to pay attention, but people are committed to make their life harder. And I have to ask myself, well, if you understand that, like your life can be like a day at a time can be like a brick, right? Like that one brick every single day that you get, right? You get 365 bricks a year. What are you building with those bricks? You know what the majority of people are doing with those bricks? They're tossing them to the side, right? They're building things that they don't even want. They have to ask themselves later on, why, why do I have this life? Why am I not living in, in full prosperity or in success? It's almost like just a dream, right? People can dream all day long, but it doesn't mean it's going to become their reality. But yet, if we were deliberate in how we were using those bricks, and I think of the story with Will Smith, and you don't have to like the guy after he smacked Chris Rock, but nonetheless, he had a good story when he was talking about a brick, right? Because if he was a bricklayer, basically he was saying he will lay that brick as perfectly as a brick could be laid, where many people they would just kind of haphazardly try to put a house together or haphazardly put a fire pit together. Yet they are not meticulous about how they're laying those bricks. That is your days, right? Now let's go to the smallest fraction. Those are your seconds. What are you doing with them? What are you doing with those times, those days, those weeks, those years? You're just making your life harder when you're not being deliberate. Now, I'm not saying you need to be deliberate 24/7. I don't think that's going to be plausible, right? There's going to be times when you want to take a break, but there's going to be times when you want to take action also. So people are committed to make their life harder because they are also committed to not paying attention. So if you just gave yourself an intent to pay attention a little bit more, imagine how far you can go. Of course, you're going to need some consistency. Of course, you're going to need to develop some discipline. Of course, you might need some assistance to look at your blind spots. And there's many things that you can do to understand who you are, where you came from, and then to know those areas of yourself. And there's a couple of tests that come to my mind. There's the shadow self test that you can take, and it was a guy who reached out to me. He wanted me to work for him to deliver the shadow test to people because what I was doing is essentially helping people with their, find their shadows. And then the other option would be your Clifton Strength Finder test to figure out where you're strong at. If you take both of these tests, you will learn a tremendous amount about yourself. Now, of course, you can get a coach, and coach can help you, figure out those areas naturally. But those tests are non-invasive. Both tests together will probably take you about 3 hours. I'm not asking you to take those tests all at once. I'm just saying to maybe spend a time where you will be on your phone or doing something that will bring about no meaning to understand a little bit more about yourself. And then when you get the results, I want you to really read them, and I want you to understand them. And I want you to operate in the sense of, these tests are not trying to get me or out to get me, right? Just accept it, right? Just have full acceptance to it and not try to make excuses. Well, like the reason why I do this is because of this and this person. No, no, no. The test is built to help you see the inside, right? The parts of you that you might not see all the time. And when I took these tests, it was very interesting. The first test, the shadow test, a lot of it was my past self. A lot of it was the ego and the stubbornness. And of course, I still have the ego and the stubbornness, but not to the degree of what I had when I was growing up and when I was immature. And so when I took the test, I was like, this is exactly who I was, the shadow self, right? But then I learned, I did the work, year, 2 years, 3 years, like the work to get out of that shadow, right? To get out of that darkness. I didn't want my life to be hard. And then I looked at the Clifton Strength Finder test, and I took the test. And it's like only like $50. It might be a little bit more now, but it was, an eye-opening experience for me to realize what I am good at. Because when someone tells you like, hey, you're really good at that, guess what? You probably will lean into it versus, yeah, I'm being a jack of all trades, or I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to find my way, or I'm trying to find my purpose or my meaning. And there's so many people who get caught in waiting to figure out what they're meant to do. Well, the Clifton Strength Finder test just helps you figure out what you're good at right now. And then you get to figure out if maybe what your top 5 or top 10 are can be used or leveraged in a way where you can create a lifestyle, career, whatever it be. For me, I'm good with people. I'm good with helping people see forward thinking. So if you're doing something, your A, I can tell you what the B is going to be. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the only person who has these skills because it's like only 26 skills or something like that. So, of course, or maybe more than 26, but the whole moral is there's going to be people with different mixes. And so you have to find the person who has a mix that you will like, or a mix that maybe is going to help you get ahead, right? Maybe stop making life so hard. Because if you want to be a person that looks at your childhood, your circumstance, and you want to say the reason why you're this person is because of your parents or because your area where you grew up, you can live and you can continue to define yourself in those eyes and those terms. But I encourage you to think of the opposite, to think of the way out. How can you begin to make some changes? How can you begin to not make your life easier, but to make your life with more meaning, right? To give your life some purpose, right? You're not chasing a dream because you saw someone else do it. You're chasing the dream because it is who you are. And so you just have to figure out who you are, who you want to be. And then you have to stop making life hard and get out of life's way and just start to live with intent. Be honest with yourself. Some people, when it comes to their life, it comes down to this mindset. Do you want it, or do you just kind of want it? And too many people in this world, they just kind of want it. And so I encourage you to not just kind of want life, but to fully step into it and desire it for everything that it can be today.